Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Raquel and I am here to read the Caraval series. So I have been wanting to read this series for like about a year. I've been hearing everyone talk about the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, but I've heard that it's really best if you read this series first. So I decided to read these. I really felt like December would be a good time to read them, mostly just because that's the time I really am craving something just really magical and whimsical, and I thought this would be the perfect series to read. Stick around if you're curious to see my thoughts and see if this is something that you would be interested in reading as well.
Hello. Okay, here is our first update for the Book of Caraval. I'm exactly on page 100. Now, I'm going to probably tell you every little detail of the first 100 pages, and then I'm going to try to be a little bit more vague as the story goes on. And as I read the other books, I will try not to give too much away, but I do want to tell you everything that's kind of happened in the first 100 pages, just because I feel like it's a really good introduction to the series. So we start off knowing that there are two sisters, Scarlet and Donatella, and they live on this island and their father is really horrible to them. The beginning of this book starts off with Scarlet writing letters to the master of Caraval. Caraval is a magical traveling circus, and she keeps writing letters to Legend, which is the master of Caraval. She writes him a letter every year begging him to come to their little island. And Legend, of course, never really writes her back. Year after year after year, he never writes her back. Eventually, she kind of gives up on the idea, but he finally writes her back years later, and she's so excited. But now Scarlett is actually engaged to marry this man that she's actually never met. It's an arranged marriage through her father. And so Legend has given her two tickets, one with the name Scarlett, one with the name Donatella, and one that she assumes is for her fiance. And so she goes to tell Donatella about it. She's super excited. She finds Donatella with a sailor in a kind of a compromising situation, but tells her about how excited she is. And Donatella's like, "Well, we got to go." And by the way, this Caraval is not coming to their island. The letter specifically says, "Hey, I'm not coming to your island, but if you're able to get away, it's going to be on this other island." So Donatella is like, absolutely, we need to go. She's a lot more brave and like spontaneous and mischievous than Scarlett is. Scarlett's very reserved and terrified of all of the outcomes and just wants to be the responsible one. So Donatella's trying to convince her to go, and she's like, "There's no way we're going to be able to get out of here without our dad finding out. Like they had tried this before, and it never really worked out, and they both got in trouble." But the sailor that Donatella was caught with is like, "Yeah, I'll bring you guys to this other island. I know exactly where that is." And they end up knocking Scarlet out because she refuses to like be brave enough to go. So they knock her out, drag her, and bring her. And when she wakes up, she's on this tiny little rowboat with the sailor. His name's Julian. And she's like, "Where's my sister?" He's like, "Oh, I just brought her in this little boat up to the shore. Like, it can only fit two, so I came back to get you." And she's just like, "Okay." And she gets there, and she doesn't see any sign of her sister. She doesn't see footsteps. There's like no one anywhere, and she's kind of like getting really nervous that she's not gonna be able to find her sister. But Julian's like, "Just relax, it's fine, she's gonna take care of herself." She probably went ahead and went off to Caraval. In the letter that they had gotten about with their tickets, it had said, "If you don't get there by midnight, the gates are going to be closed and you won't be able to come." So he's like, she's probably just in a rush to get to Caraval to get into the gates. Like, she's probably fine. Scarlett's obviously not convinced. She doesn't even know this guy, right? But then they try to get there. He's just like trying to convince her, like, "It's really cold. You're going to freeze to death out here if you don't just get somewhere safe and, indoors, and like, just trust me." And like, she doesn't know what else to do. She's like completely alone, doesn't know where her sister is. Anyway, they finally make their way to the gates of Caraval, which, like, let me say, is just so incredibly magical and whimsical and just amazing. Like, I'm really, really loving like the vibes in this book right now. And they get there, and obviously she's still looking for her sister, but kind of just wants to get in the games because she's pretty convinced at this point that her sister's probably already there. You do have the option when you get there to either play in the games or watch the games, and she's like, "Yep, Donatella is probably going to be playing, so I'm going to go that way." But Julian says, like, "Oh yeah, we're the guests of Legend this year, the special guests, and I'm her fiance," because we're assuming that that's who that their ticket was for, was her fiance. And so they're like, "Oh yeah, we know about the special guest. We've heard all about you. Come on in." So they're kind of having to pretend that they're like engaged. Scarlett is like horrified by this, but she's like, whatever. And then she finds out that Julian has actually played in this game before, and he's being very secretive about what he knows, but he seems to have definitely some information about this game, and she wants to use that to her advantage. She knows nothing. She's like a little bit worried about it, and she really wants to find her sister. And like, having him along doesn't seem to hurt things really. So she's playing along. And I will say, like, when you get in, while these games are beautiful and magical, and the world is just like really lush and just every childlike wonder you've ever had, there's also something a little bit sinister about it. We know a few years ago that the traveling circus had stopped traveling for a little while because like a girl had died. We don't know anything about that, but they're explaining in the games like, hey, remember, this is just a game. Like it even says it something like that here. Remember, it's only a game. They're like, things are going to feel very real, but like don't get too caught up in the fantasy of it. Like remember that it's just a game, or else like you can get like stuck here. So there's like, yeah, there's like something a little sinister underneath all of the magic, which I think makes it so much more interesting. I'm going to go read some more of this and I will let you know when I'm about like halfway. Okay, we are back for another update on Caraval. I'm halfway through. I am on page 207, which is chapter 20, and I'm still very much enjoying this. Um, I'm not really sure where I got the idea that this was a magical circus. I think that's just kind of like what I've had in my head for the last like year that I've known about this series, but it's not really a circus. It's more like a traveling game, if that makes sense. I don't know. The master kind of reminds me of like a circus ringleader, but like it doesn't. It's not really a circus. It's just like a game. But the whole point of the game is that there's like a mystery and there's all these clues, and every clue leads to another clue, etc. Until you figure out the mystery. And the mystery for this year's Caraval is Donatella, Scarlett's sister. She is missing, and the whole point of the game is to try to find her. So every contestant playing in this game is also looking for Donatella. And so I think the cool thing about this is, we're told from the very beginning, this is just a game. Everything in here is going to feel real, but it's just a game. But like the lines are very blurred on what's real and what's a game. And you really just don't know what to believe. I feel it's like still extremely magical and whimsical, kind of topsy turvy, like exactly how you feel in like Alice in Wonderland when not everything really makes sense. It almost feels like a fever dream at sometimes, and you don't really know what's real and what isn't. And like, I love it. It's so good. I feel like I keep getting to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop for the night, but like, I got to keep going. And I just got to the halfway point, which I thought was going to be my stopping place. And I'm just at this point now where I got to know what's happening. And we're at this point where I really feel like we're about to get a lot of information. And I'm just super excited. I feel like we keep getting these little bits of information, little Easter eggs, little things I feel like the author's throwing at us. And if all of that ends up like making sense in the end, or if like there's some genius like plot twist or something, I feel like I'm going to rate this book really, really high because I'm having such a good time. I think at this point, it's just comes down to how it's going to end, if I'm going to like it or not. Because like the writing is really good. And while it's very young adult, it does feel very young adult. I just like love everything about this right now. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. I think I'm just going to update you when I finish it because, yeah, loving this so much. Okay, I'm finally back with my final thoughts on Caraval, and I gotta say, I ended up being a little bit disappointed. I absolutely loved and ate up the first half of this book, but the last half kind of left me like a little underwhelmed. I think I was really excited to get to the games of Caraval, and then they were not the games I was like kind of hoping for. I don't even know what I was hoping for, but I was kind of hoping for a more like structured sort of game, I guess. Trials, I don't know, something, but this wasn't exactly what I had pictured for the game. So that was a little bit disappointing. And then the writing, like the young, like while it was very beautiful and like flowery and descriptive, I think it felt very young. And while that didn't bother me initially, I think it started to bother me as time went on, just how young it felt. And I think the ending left me in a little bit of a whiplash. Like, it's like, oh, this is the end. Oh, just kidding. This is actually the end. Nope, fooled you again. This is the end. And then, it definitely leaves you on a little bit of a cliffhanger as we go into the second book. Nothing crazy, but it definitely opens for more to explore in the next book. But I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to rate this yet. I think if I had to choose right now, I'd be somewhere between a 3.5 and 4 because I did absolutely love the first part of this. And I did think that the writing was very beautiful. And I mean, I did fly through this pretty quickly. So that has to say something. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed in the second half, but I have heard that the second book, Legendary, gets a lot better. So I am intrigued to read that, and I will let you know when I've gotten a little bit into that one.
Here's my first and kind of late update on Legendary. I am on page 301, which is chapter 29, so I'm like a little over halfway now. And I am liking this one about the same that I liked Caraval. I think it's very magical still, very whimsical, kind of a whole new idea. We're still playing Caraval, but this book is from the perspective of Donatella, Scarlet's sister from the first one. And I think I like her better as a main character because she's like a little bit wild, a little bit more like spontaneous and like I don't know, just has a little bit more to her, I feel like, than Scarlet, who was just like always scared and responsible and like, I don't know, kind of a stick in the mud. So I kind of like this main character better. And I think that the storyline is really interesting. This one, I don't want to give too much away, but basically Donatella has been writing letters to this mysterious man for a while. This mysterious like pen pal has information about their mother who disappeared several years ago, and they don't know what happened to her, where she went or anything. And this man seems to have knowledge about that. There's some things with this like kind of magical deck of cards that I kind of picture like tarot cards and some fates that used to control the world that kind of remind me of like gods, I guess. And I think that's kind of a cool concept. And all we know is that whereas in the first Caraval games, the prize was one wish, and this one, the prize is knowing the true identity of Legend, because Legend is like not his real name or her real name. We have no idea who Legend is. And so like that is going to be the prize, and Donatella needs to figure out the true name of Legend to be able to get this information about her mother. So I'm finding it just as intriguing. I actually am liking like the romantic subplots much better in this book than I did the first one, but I'm feeling about the same. I really like it. I like the writing. I'm still feeling like it's very YA, and it does make me wish that this series was like a little bit more adult, but otherwise I'm having like a really good time with it, and I am still like flying through this. I think that I'll probably end up finishing this maybe tomorrow. I do have to work tomorrow, but I'm gonna listen to it on audio a little bit and finish reading it maybe tomorrow evening, so I will let you know when I finished it. I just finished Legendary, and I think I like this one a little bit better than the first one. I think that I was just so like excited about the first one that I just like flew through it because it was like very magical, lyrical, like whimsical writing and like a really cool world. But in this one, I think the plot was like a little bit better, and the main character, Donatella, was a little bit better than Scarlet, and I liked the way that this ended a lot more than the first one. I still think this really leaves things open for the next book, so I really have no idea what the last book is going to be about, but I'm definitely interested, I'm definitely invested, and I will let you know when I get into the third one. Okay, I ended up finishing Finale, and I don't know why I do this to myself all the time. I actually really hate reading series back to back, especially if it's fantasy. I really just need like a little bit of like a break in between the series. I don't know why I did this to myself, and I think that made me want to give this a lower rating. So I took a day to think about it. I finished this a day ago, and I think overall this series is really good. This book ended, I think it was a really good ending to the whole series. I never really got a chance to update you as I was going, and I don't really want to give away too much because it's like a lot of information that you learn in the second book. But I think overall the series is good. I think I'm going to give this a 4-star as well. I gave every single one of them a 4-star. But I think my biggest like problems with this series are really just, they all come down to the fact that it's very young adult. Like the writing is very young adult, and what I mean by that is, you know, with young adult writing, you get a lot of like explanation, like over explanation. Like you're not really allowed to think for yourself because the characters like go into heavy detail of reminding you of things that happened, or like, you know, really guiding you along the like pathway that you're supposed to be thinking rather than letting you do it for yourself. Which can be a little bit frustrating. And that's not to say that this isn't. Like, again, a 4 stars are a really great rating, and I think all of these books are really good. I just am saying the only reason that this wasn't like a 5-star for me is because it's YA. I think as far as like the setting and like the immersion into this like magical world was like amazing, really, really well done. I actually really liked the romances and the second and third books specifically. And like everything about it was good. Yeah, it's just the fact that it's very young adult made me kind of, I don't know, cringe a little bit sometimes. If this whole series was adult, I probably would have rated them all 5 stars. Okay, so as a recap, just finished all of these, and I've actually had about a week to really think about my thoughts and feelings on this series. I ended up settling on a 4-star for all of them. But I am a little conflicted with that. I have really been thinking about it a lot, trying to decide how I feel about these. It is exactly, I think, what it was supposed to be. It is a young adult fantasy series, very whimsical, very magical, with, you know, pretty heavy romance in there. And I think it is exactly what it says it's going to be. And it really does deliver on all of those fronts. But I think all of my criticisms for this series really just come down to the fact that it's a young adult series. I don't find as much interest in YA writing specifically as I used to. And so I don't think that's this series' fault. I think that if you like YA fantasy romance with the really magical, whimsical world, like, you will absolutely love these. Like, I still very much highly recommend them, and I can definitely see like why people love these so much. They were really good. I mentioned this a little bit before about the writing, but I feel like when you read young adult writing, it feels young. I mean, for lack of a better word, like, our characters think like teenagers. They are dramatic and, you know, very emotional, and can sometimes be a little bit naive. And a lot of times the writing doesn't allow you to think or come up with your own conclusions about things. I think it really guides you onto how you should be thinking and what you should be like focusing on. Which I don't really prefer. And I think I prefer a little bit more of an adult type of writing. Like, we're allowed to, where you're allowed to kind of use your brain just a little bit more, and, the characters are maybe a little older. I don't know, I just prefer being in the mind of the main character that's a little bit older, and a story that's written for a slightly older audience. Like, for example, if you've ever read the Six of Crows duology, I think that's like an amazing YA fantasy series, but it read older to me. Or I'm like reading the Letters of Enchantment duology right now, like Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows doesn't read that young. Like, I feel like it feels like a new adult kind of story, or just a regular adult story, and those I don't mind. But I feel like just overall these just felt really young for me, and I think that's my only criticism. Otherwise, I thought these were really good, and I would still highly recommend them. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.